What's going on YouTube? JT is Reborn here, and welcome back to another edition of my DC comic book reviews. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Night Terrors Ravager issue number 2. This one is written by Ed Brisson and art by Dexter Soy. And this is again another Night Terrors spinoff, but it kind of deals with characters like trying to jump from the dream world, the nightmare world, into the real world. So, and while it's not as connected to the stuff with Insomnia per se, it still feels like it could have an impact in its own capacity, if you will. So as we saw in the last issue, Rose Wilson was dealing with a character known as like the Murder Man or the Nightmare Man or whatever he was, and she faced off against a younger version of herself, and she's being used as a conduit of sorts with her blood to jump into the real world, if you will. And some really kind of like messed up stuff is going on in this issue. Rose again kind of confronting her younger self, and even in a way helps to kind of comfort her and kind of showcase how she's like evolved a bit as a character, if you will, a little bit more of her heroic side on like what she's going on with her dad and all that. She has kind of a nice moment where she kind of turns her younger alternative self back from the demonic form, if you will, back into a more humanoid-esque form before she's waking up, and certain things are going on with her blood that may set things up for future stuff, even as this issue indicates, hey, this is to be continued in Batman the Brave and the Bold issue number 4. So if you want to know more about what's going on with Rose and that, then you should check that out there. But the artwork this time around by Dexter Soy, I really like the combination of Dexter Soy and Ed Brisson when it comes to the Deathstroke stuff. Now, I was a big fan of what they did in the whole Deathstroke Year 1 storyline. A series that I didn't really like. Once the Deathstroke Incorporated stuff kind of came to an end with the Williamson stuff, and then we had that thing, I was like, do we really need this? But as I read it, I actually found myself liking that particular like 6-issue storyline more than I did the rest of Deathstroke Incorporated. And I like the way that Brisson writes Rose here. You get to see kind of like I said, that more heroic side, like her coming to terms with her past nightmares and all that. And again, with her being used as a bit of a conduit from this murder man, if you will, to get into the real world, there feels like there's a little bit more stakes going on here. Yes, you don't necessarily have Insomnia in that in this particular issue be like, where's the Nightmare Stone, Rose? Which is a bit of a disappointment, if you will. But again, you feel like this kind of could branch off into something else interesting with the whole Night Terrors aspect. So it's taking that concept with the dreams and actually kind of bringing that into the real world in that. So it's not quite as finely tuned, if you will, with the rest of the event. It doesn't really, I mean, if you miss this, I feel like you wouldn't really be missing too much, but it is a good Rose Wilson storyline on its own, and there's some really spectacular artwork from Ed Brisson in that. So all things considered, I did like this one more than the Poison Ivy one. I like it more than the Joker one, which I did read before recording this video. So you hear my thoughts on the Joker one afterwards. Even then, like just on its own, I still like this story. Did it really add too much to Night Terrors? Not fully 100%, but the way it kind of tackled its story and like what it did with Rose's character, I thought was interesting enough, and it kind of sets the stage for potentially a really interesting story going forward. Even by the end of the issue, she wonders if somebody else kind of came out of the dream. Perhaps this other younger alternative version of herself could potentially be in the real world too, and I think that leaves the door open for something really fascinating where Rose has to act as like a big sister of sorts to her younger alternative self. I think that could make for a fascinating story. So all things considered, I did like these 2 issues overall. I don't think they were necessary in terms of like really adding on like 100% to the main Night Terror story with Insomnia and all that. So if you skip them, I don't think you're missing all that much, but it did have an interesting enough story on its own, and the artwork is really good, and it does set the stage for some interesting stuff going forward, whereas some of the other stuff, it just kind of felt like filler. So we'll see what happens next with Rose. I may actually go ahead and check out the Brave and the Bold stuff because I like what Ed Brisson is writing the Wilson family, and I like Dexter Soy's artwork quite a bit, so I may actually go ahead and check that out to see where they go from here with this thing. So even if this one didn't necessarily build as much up with the Insomnia storyline, it still had an interesting enough story on its own. So yeah, I'd say go ahead and, like, if you got to check out any of the random spin-off ones that don't necessarily add 100% too much to the overall Night Terror story but are kind of interesting on their own, then this is one to check out. But if you just kind of want the Night Terrors focus stuff, the important details, you could skip this one and you're not going to miss too much. So that's where I'm going to leave it with this one. Really great artwork and an interesting Rose Wilson storyline, but not necessarily something you need to read if you really want to get the main gist of what's going on with Night Terrors. But it does set the stage for some interesting aspects and the consequences of this particular storyline and the repercussions that it could have going into the future. So there you go. Little scattershot thoughts, but I liked it overall. So anyways, if you have any thoughts on this particular issue, let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for more content, all of the fun stuff. And as always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.